Today's show is a compilation episode which I hope will be useful. I picked the clips as I thought they would give you easy steps to improve your overall well-being. Starting off with Sheena McKinney from episode 4, who talks about lemon water and nostril breathing. Then Anthony Rafferty from episode 10, talking about ways to improve gut health. And finally, Cleide Burgess and myself from episode 1 talk about gratitude and suggest an exercise for you to do.
Let's talk about the first one, which is first thing in the morning, ideally before you have your coffee or tea, having some lemon water. And a lot of people say having it warm or even close to hot is beneficial with some fresh lemon. So one of the things that can do for you is really just kind of prime your digestive tract for the day and kind of give it a little bit of a cleanse. It's really helpful for the liver and just to help your liver do the job that it's meant to do, which is to help detoxify and purify your body. It can actually give you a little dose of some vitamin C and the powerful antioxidants that it provides. It can actually help prevent kidney stones. It has obviously the benefit of hydrating you first thing in the morning. And again, there's lots of benefits, but just some how-tos to how to incorporate this into your life. And something I've found that helps me remember is to put out your cup or your glass the night before so that first thing in the morning, whatever part of your routine you have, you're reminded of this powerful way to just kickstart your day and to get your system kind of cleansed and going. A couple tips too, the rind itself of the lemon has great nutrients, but sadly the rind of citrus is pretty toxic as far as pesticides, or it can be. So if you're using the lemon zest, which I do encourage, please use organic. There's just a ton of pesticides on there, and if not, that's not in your budget or you can't find it, then by all means, squeeze some lemon into your water. You don't have to worry too much about the quantity. I mean, up to half of a lemon is good, or just any amount. Again, it's just a great practice to start your day out every day with a little bit of lemon in your water.
Would you add salt to this?
You could. Some people have a hard time with the taste. You could use a little bit of natural sweetener, although I encourage people to try to stick with just the lemon, but the salt could be a great addition. I will say, if you have any concern about enamel for your teeth, it is diluted by the water, but you could always try a straw or drink it in such a way that you're kind of trying to bypass your teeth a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard that the addition of salt actually makes it more hydrating.
Yeah. Especially hydrating is if you use Celtic sea salt, more so than even pink Himalayan sea salt. The Celtic sea salt is more hydrating and has more minerals, so that's another great tip. So another one I wanted to bring up is what I mentioned is alternate nostril breathing. But this is a powerful technique. Again, absolutely free. You could do it anytime, anywhere. But if you are feeling stress, anxiety, it is extremely powerful. And actually, if you do it on a regular basis, like anything, the better you get at it, the more you do it, the better the benefits. You can actually increase lung function and respiratory endurance, help lower your heart rate, but absolutely gives you a sense of well-being, and it can be pretty instant. So literally, it is just a matter of, and if your listeners want to, you can actually do this and kind of follow along. But you literally block one nostril with the one finger. You breathe in through that open nostril, and before you exhale, you switch over and block that nostril that you breathed in from, and breathe out the other, and then alternate. Again, you can look up online. There's lots of quick tips on how to do it, but by doing this, you can do this for up to 5 minutes, just alternating your breath, where again, you breathe in and then hold that nostril, breathe out, and alternate. And it is incredibly helpful, and you usually can feel right away just more of a sense of well-being and a reduction in stress and anxiety. So again, it's free, it's easy, it's not going to hurt you, it's not harmful. It may actually help you get through a tough situation or just feel more balanced. Also, if you're someone like me who tends to hold their breath and not realize it, not breathe deep enough, you're just increasing your oxygen during the day, and it's just a good thing.
And why do we breathe through one nostril and out through the other? What are the benefits of that?
There's some talk and the belief that it actually is something that activates different sides of the brain, and it's pretty interesting. It's the effect on the nervous system is activated, and I think just the practice of slowing down, breathing those smooth, continuous breaths, just it calms the neural pathways. And
one thing I do is like breathe in slowly for 4, then hold for 4, and then breathe out for about 6.
Okay.
Those are the types of breathing exercises that I've been doing. So I wondered how this is different to actually using one nostril, inhaling through one nostril, exhaling through another, and that's going to have a different effect, I guess, than the exercise that I've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, you could try both and kind of see how you feel, or incorporate them both. Sometimes for me, a variety is nice. If I have a habit like the one you're describing, sometimes it's nice just to have a different go-to practice to try it the other way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how often would you do this per day?
Well, you can do it anytime you need just a quick sense of well-being or reduction in stress and anxiety. But it's encouraged to do it, every day. Again, you can do it up to 5 minutes, or sometimes you just do it, again, during a kind of a moment of, stress or crisis. Creating a habit is great. One way that I help myself with those types of things is sometimes I'll just create a reminder on my phone, or do it right before bed, and just give you kind of help you clear your brain a little bit. And
No, sounds interesting.
It's worth a try. Again, it can't hurt you, and it could bring some great benefits.
So what would you say about improving gut health? What steps could people just on an everyday basis take?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it would take just a little bit of discussion surrounding what the gut or gut health actually is. And so my aim, or the aim of my page, is kind of, it focuses in on microbiome health.
Yeah.
And essentially what the microbiome is, it is a collection of the bugs that live in a certain kind of part of your body and the genetic material that they have. So basically they have lots of genes and DNA and things like that going on, that essentially they can help to break down or ferment different food products, and they produce byproducts or metabolites, or these healthy little molecules that then go on and do other things.
Yeah.
So essentially those little things can either be really beneficial for us, they can be beneficial for our gut itself, they affect other organisms that are living in the gut, they can affect the gut lining, and they can go into the bloodstream and kind of go around our body and affect other things like our mental health and well-being. So that's why it's really quite important. Now, what is quite interesting is all over the body, we have lots of different microbiomes. So you can have like a microbiome that's different under your armpit compared to the one that's in your nose. And all these different kind of little communities are made up of lots of different types of bugs, different species of bugs, and different kind of groups of bugs in all these different locations.
Yeah.
So, but they're most densely populated in the gut. So that's why I refer to the gut microbiome quite a lot on my page, because that's the most densely populated one. There's trillions of different types of bugs there. And because when you think of that, like trillions, that's mad to think that many little organisms living in our gut. But what's really quite fascinating is if we actually look at all the kind of genetic material in our body, including bacterial and all of the other different genetic components made up in different bugs in our bodies, about 10% of that is human and 90% of it is bugs. So when you kind of start to look at it like that, you kind of think, are we just like walking bug factories, basically? And I love looking at it like that because it kind of gives people an insight into the impact that the bug community in our body can actually have on us as humans.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating about the gut bugs specifically is that the majority of them tend to live in our large intestine.
Yeah.
And what happens is when we eat food, during its kind of transit through the stomach and the small intestine, those locations higher up, you kind of get absorption of kind of minerals and vitamins and this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And then you get things that go down to the large intestine, and the bugs that live in the microbiome down there, they kind of gobble them up and they ferment things to produce these wonderful little metabolites.
Right.
Now, the thing about the microbiome is the main source of food for the gut bugs is fiber. Yeah. And that's kind of, fiber is a complex carbohydrate, which basically doesn't get broken down or processed in the upper part of the digestive system. It waits until it gets down to our large intestine where the gut bugs break it down.
Okay.
And the problem is with a kind of Western culture, we eat a lot of processed foods, highly refined foods that are very poor in fiber content. So essentially they're kind of broken down much higher up in the digestive system, and we're essentially starving our gut bugs because the foods that we're eating don't have an awful lot of fiber in them. And you start to get kind of like die-off of various species, and you just get a reduced diversity of the type of bugs that are living down there. And that essentially is what contributes to kind of poor gut function and can lead on to more kind of chronic disease occurrence.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I think I just wanted to touch on those things because I think it's really important to know what they eat. Yeah. So essentially what we put in our mouth is basically determining how our gut bugs are functioning and how diverse that kind of microbiome is. Now, the major source of fiber is in plants, essentially. Yeah. So feeding your gut bugs requires you eating complex carbohydrates from plants. And plants, basically, when I refer to plants, I mean kind of vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds. It's from all different types of plant-based products.
Right, yeah.
We know that increasing the diversity or the number of different types of plant in the diet basically directly impacts the gut microbiome by increasing the diversity of the gut bugs there.
Yeah.
There was a fascinating study called the American Gut Health Project that came out a couple of years ago where they did a population-wide investigation of the gut microbiome, and they found that people who ate 30 or more types of plant a week, they had the most diverse microbiome. So we know that basically people who eat more plants, 30 or more species of plants a week, has a better diversity in the microbiome. And we know that then if you have more of a diversity in your microbiome, because you've more different types of bugs living in there, they can function differently. So you get more function in a better and more diverse microbiome.
Yeah. So when you say 30 or more plant plant-based food. Like, that sounds quite a lot, but it's not just like vegetables or fruit, is it? You mentioned nuts and seeds are included in that.
Yeah. So anything that essentially can be grown from a plant source. So, you know, when I first heard this and I was trying to improve my microbiome, I thought, how am I going to get to 30? That's ridiculous. But it's actually quite funny, because what I encourage kind of my patients to do, or when I'm speaking to people or advise them on the microbiome, is to just get a blank piece of paper and, you know, at the start of the week, pop it on the countertop with a pen and write down any new fruit or vegetable or nut or seed or legume or any of these things that you're eating during the week. Just pop it down on your list, and it includes beans and all of these things too. And you'd be quite surprised at how quickly the kind of count can build up. So like in dinner, if you're having like a bit of garlic and onion mixed in with some broccoli or a bit of a veggie stir fry, you're kind of already dealing with about 6 or 8 different types of plant there.
Also the garlic counts as well. Garlic juice.
So all the different types of plant, will count towards your balance for the week. And I generally encourage people to kind of start assessing how that goes for them and just try and increase the diversity there. So because we know that, you know, diet has a huge role to play in how our gut functions. And essentially with every meal that we have, we can influence the gut microbiome. We can influence the bugs that are there, because essentially when food goes into our mouth, when it gets to the large intestine, the little bugs have to work a way to ferment it. So we can kind of dictate which bugs are flourishing and which bugs are kind of going to the wayside or not there in higher abundance. And one lovely thing about that is that obviously if we're eating the right foods, we can promote the good bugs. But if we're not eating the right foods or engaging kind of other behaviors that kind of promote a negative growth of bugs that aren't so good, they can tend to flourish and suppress the good bugs. So, you know, I think I really try to empower my patients, empower people to kind of think about everything they're putting into their mouth, because it has a really significant effect. And, you know, this old kind of term of you are what you eat, it's very much true. You know. So I suppose from a food point of view, I'd always recommend diversifying your plant intake. That's the main thing I'd recommend for people. And then with regard to animal products, you know, a lot of the studies have shown moving towards a more Mediterranean style diet or a more plant-based diet is much better for you than kind of consuming a diet that's very high in animal-based products. And I think specifically meat, red meat, can have a very detrimental effect on the gut microbiome because there is something called carnitine in red meat that actually, it can be converted by some of your kind of not so friendly gut bugs into something called TMAO. Right. And essentially that can go on and have a negative impact on your heart, cardiovascular health. It can affect your blood vessels. And the heme iron in red meat as well can be quite inflammatory to the gut bugs as well.
Even if you haven't been brought up in that environment, it you know, you can start at any time. You can develop it, you can change and develop it at any time. Robert Emmons talks about stages, actually. He says that there's 2 stages. And according to him, the first one is acknowledging the goodness in your life. And the second one is recognizing that some of the sources of the goodness comes from outside of yourselves. And he talks about being grateful to other people and to animals and to the world. And I have to say, be grateful to God too for all the goodness in your life.
Absolutely. I've heard one of the translations, I believe, is in the Message that talks about entering God's court with thanksgiving and attitude of gratitude, right? But one of the translations that I've read, and I think is just the most beautiful translation, of this verse. It talks about gratitude is the password into God's heart, something something like that. And I love that picture. That is in my mind. So I think that every time I want to have that one-to-one with God, I always think if I will use the password, because the password to His heart, and that to me is really, really beautiful, a beautiful picture of coming into God's presence with thanksgiving, right? Because that is going to unlock His heart, is the password that's going to open His heart towards us being in His presence. So it's a very beautiful verse. Yes.
I like that. I like that password. Yeah. Because in First Chronicles, this is First Chronicles 16:34. It says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever." And this thing about giving thanks for the goodness in your life, and He is good. He is the source of goodness. So you give thanks to Him.
Yes, and if you go back to Eamon's definition, when he talks about being first, you need to acknowledge, right? So first, we need to notice the good that God has done in our lives, right? So that is a way you need to notice. And then he talks about that recognizing that some good has been done to you, and then expressing that gratitude. So to me, is the same thing, is exactly what the Bible says, So recognize that God is the source of all good in our lives, and then express that recognition. So to me, again, the praise and the thanksgiving and the gratitude is the same. So you recognize that God is the source of good, and then you express that in saying, "Thank you, God, for doing that in my life," or even just sitting there and allowing that sense of gratitude to come into your heart, as that password, as that a way of entering in God's presence. Yes. Yeah,
and like another one in Chronicles, it says, "Now our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name."
Yeah, and again, it's saying, you are good. You are the source of goodness in my life. So recognizing and praising His name for that, which is the same thing when you do it to someone else, right? When you express your gratitude to someone, it opens their heart, and that's the thing that I use a lot when I'm trying to. It's very difficult when you're trying to have a conversation with someone who may not be, so open. The moment you express, acknowledge even that they are there with you, and you express some gratitude for having them. It's very difficult to remain in that stage, in that closed stage, when someone says, "Thank you for doing something to me." If it's that genuine, then it's very difficult to stay. It's very difficult to be sad when someone is saying thank you for something, acknowledging something that you did. And the same when we receive as well, right? When someone says thank you to you, it's difficult to be in a closed space. Because I see that as the password to anyone's heart now. Having that conversation with you makes me think about, gratitude is the way into opening someone's heart, isn't it?
Would you like to try this 3 good things intervention? It's a really simple one. It's a really good one, where you just every night before you go to sleep, just think of 3 things that were good that day, 3 things that went well. And you can write down those things and write down why those things went well, or you could write down what the 3 things are and then reflect on your role in those things and see how you feel at the end of the week.
Absolutely, because what you focus on expands, isn't it? So if you focus on the things that went difficult during the day, that will stay with you. But if you focus, so when you remember, or when you think, or when you acknowledge something that was good, you're shifting your focus to that. You can't do both at the same time. You can't feel sad and grateful at the same time. So the moment you choose to reflect on that, or to search during your day and find something that you were grateful for, then you're focusing on that good thing. So yes, absolutely, it's a really, really positive thing to do just before the end of the day or before you go to bed. Yes.
And can you imagine if you, just before you go to bed, you're actually doing this exercise rather than thinking about, your debts or your boss that you don't get on with,
Yeah. Or watching the news, with so many things that is gone wrong and difficult. Yeah. So yes, it doesn't need science really, does it, to research to see that is a positive thing to do before you go to bed. If you can have that as your last thing before you switch your brain off, will be very positive.
Yeah, excellent.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wellbeing in the Kingdom. If you've enjoyed, learned from, or been inspired or empowered by today's episode, then please help to support the show by leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts.